Hi, welcome back to True Grit and Grace. I'm really excited about today's guest because being a mom, it's been a bit of a struggle lately with homeschooling, working. And so I was excited when Levine said yes to being on the show. She is originally from New York, where she has worked with some of the biggest brands in the fashion industry. And she relocated to Los Angeles, where she has become a household name for she's a mompreneur, a household name for being a stylist. And you were recently on Bravo's hit TV show, Stripped, with your husband. And I am loving your podcast. She's got a podcast called Stripped Down, where she really shares like raw, authentic, the journey of being a mom, and also has quite a few celebrity guests on. And I'm just so excited to have you here, Allie. Thank you for being on.
Yes, thank you for having me. So great to be here.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to dig in to see how you are juggling it all, because you are working, you're a mom, you've got two beautiful daughters. We originally met through Instagram, and it's crazy. I've never met you in person, but I feel like I know you because I love watching your stories and your sweet girls on Instagram, and I love all you do. But I was like, oh my gosh, how is she doing it all? I know I've been struggling lately being a mom and trying to work from home. And I have a lot of friends who are in the same boat. And you're doing that all and nursing a 3-month-old. So before we get into questions about how you're doing it all, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and being in the fashion industry and your transition into moving to LA?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the kind words. It's funny when you hear someone like read about you, you're like, oh yeah, I did do that, and I did do that. Thank you very much. And yeah, so I'm originally from New York, as you said, and I always knew I loved fashion. I always, felt so inspired by fashion, and I didn't know what I was going to do in fashion, but I just knew it would be within that field. And so, lo and behold, I studied all kinds of, different classes in fashion and tried to figure out what was going to be design, was going to be merchandising, what was it going to be. And I feel like, like my path was kind of chose for me at first. When I was at college, I ended up being the head of our fashion club in Arizona called, the school was Northern Arizona University. Long story short, I followed a boy who was not my husband out to Arizona, thinking that he was going to be my husband. We
I
all
think a
made a
lot of us have
mistake,
done that.
right? All of us at some point have followed a guy. So I followed him to Arizona because he was going out there for military, and he wanted, us to be out there together. So I went out to Northern Arizona University and, got my fashion degree there. And I think it was actually a blessing in disguise, because even though him and I did not at all work out, it was a smaller school, and I was kind of this big fish in this small pond. And, because I was from New York and I had, worked, in fashion, in high school at so many different, amazing designer stores, and done little internships throughout high school to get like little, mini experiences and all these things. When I got to, college, I already kind of had like a leg up and knew really what I was doing, where I was going, and what I wanted. And so I became the president of the fashion club there of NAMA. And, I had all these opportunities presented to me for other students to be able to help them get a job when we were all finishing up at school. And it just so happened, while I was sitting down with like Target and Macy's and Bloomingdale's and all these heads of corporate to find jobs for students, that I happened to be offered to intern for Target as well. And so I was able
Wow.
to, it was so cool. They're such an amazing company. And so they trained me. I became, an intern for their executive of soft lines team. And after interning with them, they were like, hey, you've been amazing. We want to fast track you to our management team. We want to, send you over to corporate. And so I started training, I went back to New York, started training, in New York City at their like big flagship store, and training that they had for corporate. And that kind of like got things going for me again, being back in New York. And I, worked for Target for quite a few years, did really amazing with them. I was like 21 years old when I was running one of their stores. It was kind of crazy. and I loved it, but I realized retail wasn't for me. And so that was when I kind of had to make this hard decision of like, what am I going to do? You know, if it was this
Yeah.
company, they built me up, they've trained me, all these things. And I turned to them and they said, well, no worries. You can go work in corporate in, Minnesota and design and do this and do that. And I thought, oh, Minnesota. I left New York because it was cold. I was like, I was enjoying Arizona. It was hot. That's terrible, but true. And, I was young and I was like, I flew out there. I let them, show me the opportunity, but it just wasn't for me. I was not, the kind of girl that was just wanting to go to Minnesota. I loved New York. I'd only moved because of a stupid guy. So it was like, I want to put my roots back in New York, So fast forward, I left Target, started working in New York City for a company called Fragments, which was a private label jewelry company for many years, where I helped design and do shipping for like Aeropostale, Banana Republic, Saks, Neiman Marcus, all like low end to high end private label brands. And then from there, I was asked to go to Coach. I worked for Coach on their non-CC team with Reed Croft, and we did all the like non-actual CC, accessories and bags and everything. Then I went to Lacoste and Talbots. I was all over the map in, fashion. And after, again, quite some time and the stock market was crashing, I had been let go from Coach. And I was like, okay, now what,
Yeah.
And I felt like, oh my gosh, I built up this whole fashion behind me. And now the stock market is crashing and there's no fashion, jobs. And like, oh my God, what do I do? And I'm feeling so lost. And I started like thinking like, what is it that I maybe want to do in this time where everything's kind of on hold, with my industry. And then I realized, you know what, I want to give, more of the, happening entertainment world a shot. But styling really wasn't a term back then, like
What
Rachel.
year was this? Was this like in 2008 or?
Yeah, something like that. I was gonna say I'm gonna date myself, something like that, because I finished college in 2006, so it was probably it was probably like 2008, 2007, 2008.
Mhm.
And it was just like everybody, fashion especially was kind of like very limited jobs, and everything was on hold, and
Kind of like
it was
we
like,
are now.
yeah, right. I know. Right. Go figure. Yeah. And so it was like, okay, what am I going to do? And stylists, really, they weren't a term back then. Rachel Zoe's show had like kind of just came out. I was just starting to really like get into like that whole, scene and world. And I started asking around. I had some family in the business, and I said, I think I want to maybe give this a shot and check out, the fashion side of, movies and everything. And back then, New York was still doing, some movies. And so I, had a couple introductions and interviews. I ended up interviewing with the incredible and insane Oliver Stone. And he was, oh my
Wow.
God, he was amazing, but so terrifying in my interview. And I'll never forget that. I was just sitting there like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But it was amazing. His team ended up hiring me. I became, a production assistant for them, coffee, donuts, bitch girl, whatever you want to call me, running around doing whatever they needed. But I learned so much, and I got to really get my hands dirty and see, what that was and what that life was versus what I was doing in corporate. And it was so different. And I loved
Mhm.
how, it was so exciting. And, I wasn't behind a screen and a desk in corporate anymore. And I was out in the world and I was running around. And yeah, sure, I was running around at 4 a.m. exhausted, but I was still getting to like, live and run and do all these things for all these important people. And, then the costume designer on that movie, Ellen Mirajnik, she was amazing. She kind of took me under her wing while I was working as a production assistant and helped me help in costume and had me like running around kind of a little bit like Devil Wears Prada, where I would go to like, her apartment and feed her cat and, like go
Yeah.
pick up whatever she needed. And, if she needed something at 10 o'clock at night, it was like, go get it and bring it back to her. But I was just grateful to be able to like actually, do things like in costume and, and in that world and get to learn. And so, long story
Well,
short.
everything that you're saying is like, I just shared a message on Instagram today and I said, your hard work puts you where your blessings can find you.
Oh, I love
And
that.
and it really shows from everything you've done is even through the hard times and being the bitch girl or the gopher girl or whatever you want to call it, you were grateful to be in that moment and you were learning from everything. And I think that
Yes.
I'm so glad you're sharing this process because a lot of times it looks so glamorous when you see someone and you see their beautiful pictures, on Instagram or whatever they're posting, or you're reading their blog or you're listening to their podcast or whatever it is. It looks easy, and you don't see like the years of
Right.
making that
You
it
don't.
took
You
to
don't see the
get
blood,
to
sweat,
that.
and tears. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad that you're sharing this, because it takes a lot of grit to
Yeah.
go after your dreams, and that it's a step-by-step process. So whether you're like you were doing 4 a.m,
Yeah.
doing whatever it took to get there, like
Right.
you were like all in.
Yeah.
So then how long did you work for, like, on the movie sets and stuff like that?
Yeah. So after working with Ellen and kind of really getting experience costume, I, was offered to work on a couple other shows in New York, some movies, some TV shows. And then I was actually asked by some of that same team that was going to Atlanta to work on Big Mama's House. I think it was 2 or 3 with Martin Lawrence. And so I went to Atlanta and started working with them. And we worked on that movie, and it was amazing. And that team that was there actually was from LA, the other side of the team. And that team said, would you want to maybe come out to Los Angeles? It sounds like what you're doing and what you're sharing with us of your experience, that you would rather be, fast tracked lifestyle, doing this, doing that. And that's Los Angeles. Not to say New York's not fast, but when it comes to this industry, it's LA. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, I just got back to New York a few years ago. I just kind of started like getting, used to being here. My family's here, and it was just like, and I was dating my now husband at the time. And, he was coming to visit me in Atlanta, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, what do you think? And he was just so amazing and was like, whatever you want to do, like, I'll go with you. And he followed me and took me, out to LA with him, and we started our lives out here. And honestly, he didn't even have a job, and I was just getting into the costume industry, and they were helping me get in the union and work at the costume warehouse, and all these things again that I do as steps to get
Yeah.
in. So they helped me get into the Eastern Costume was a place where you work to learn about costume and work for costume designers and everything. And so I did that and put in my hours and was able to get my union, and that took like over a year. And all these things I did to kind of basically take stepping stones,
Mm-hmm.
in the industry.
And pay
And
your dues. You
and
paid
pay
your
your dues,
dues.
right? Exactly. And they let me know, like, hey, if you're gonna come with us, like, then you're gonna kind of owe us, this. And so I knew I was gonna be doing the costume warehouse. I knew I was gonna be working on their shows because they had given me that opportunity, and I was grateful,
Mm-hmm.
And so then after quite a bit of time, same thing, I started kind of, after doing a few shows out in LA and everything, I started realizing, maybe costumes not for me. I loved it, but it just didn't feel like what I was really looking for. I still wanted more fast paced. I still wanted more current and that kind of thing. And I didn't feel like I was getting it from costume. And that's when styling was kind of really becoming hot. And stylists were more known. And it was like, oh, there's people that shop for that. Oh, there's people that do this. And I was like, ooh, I might be good at that, And so after, a couple of years in LA, I started asking around, to help with different stylists, and I started interning all over again and assisting all over
Okay, when you
again.
say stylist,
Yeah,
is that like, because I don't know the industry, that
yeah,
side of
sure.
the industry. When you say stylist and what you transitioned to, does that mean like you were a stylist for celebrities or for
Yeah,
other influencers and say,
yeah,
this is what you should wear for the, oh, because let me tell you,
exactly. Yeah.
girl, I went from living, because I was a professional dancer. And so I
I saw
lived in
that.
dance
Yes.
clothes, and
Mm-hmm.
then I lived every day in gym clothes. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
own. I remember when I moved in with my husband, and he like cleared out the closet for me, and I moved my clothes in, and he goes, "That's all your clothes? That's it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so when I became a speaker and then I was asked to do talk shows, I was freaking out, like, what do I wear? I had no idea
Wow.
what to wear. And I remember
Yeah,
calling
it's
one of
it's
my
it's
friends.
intense.
It
Yeah.
is. And I remember calling one of my friends, and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be on the Today Show and I have no idea what I'm going to wear." She goes, "Oh, well, you should wear some cowboy boots and a cowboy hat." And I was like, "No, just because I'm from Texas doesn't mean
Right.
that I walk around in a cowboy hat all day. Like, I do have
Right.
a cowboy hat, but I'm not going to wear it to
Totally.
interview with Megyn Kelly." Like,
That's hilarious.
and there's just this whole thought of how, people, like it or not, people judge you right away on what you look like and
Yes.
whether they're going to. I mean, I got judged on the doctors for, I had a lot of people upset with me about the shoes I was wearing, saying, "How can you
Oh,
have
geez.
CRPS and wear those shoes?" Like, there's a lot of thought that goes into
Yeah.
what you're going to wear. And I don't know if you know who Toy Sweeney is, but she was on my show and she's
Yes.
also a stylist. I love her. And she talks
Yes.
about just the power of what you wear and how it can affect your mood. And so,
Absolutely. Oh, I tell people all the time, that's one of my favorite parts of my job is transforming from the inside out. Yes, it's so important. Of course, presentation wise, and unfortunately, people do judge. But really, for me, like with styling, and whether it be a celebrity or a personal client, it's like if I make them feel good and I can help transform them from the inside out, that's to me like the big moment, because then all of a
mhm.
sudden their confidence changes. I always say confidence is your best accessory, and that's what I fell in love with styling. Once I left costume and I started interning, I worked for, back when Monica Rose was doing, the Kardashians, and I interned, with their team, and I worked for Kanye West's stylist, Rena Lupadora, for quite some time, and, Emma Romer's stylist, Jessica Chastain, and all these different people. I started, getting my own roots in styling and started, making, networking and making relationships and finding, different showrooms and how it worked and understanding it. And I fell in love with it. I was like, wow, these hours are crazy, but like I'm thriving and I'm loving everything I'm doing and the people and how I'm making them feel and all these things, even though I was only an assistant at that point. And once I started getting asked to, style all these different, D-listers in Hollywood that just nobody knew who they were. But of course, as things can change overnight. And so I had, celebrities all of a sudden becoming actual celebrities and, oh, they got this show. Oh, they booked, this press junket. And all of a sudden I was getting them ready for like big events. And before I knew it, I had a bunch of people that were getting best dressed with my name attached to it. And it was like
Wow.
surreal, it was like, oh my gosh, wait, they got best dressed in this magazine, or Vogue Italia said, what about my style? It was like,
Yeah.
it
That's
was
just what's
so,
so crazy too about, like, I was like a new author, never been on like a talk show. And
yeah,
it was so wild to me. And by the way, I just went to Nordstrom's and picked out an outfit, but I wish I had
yeah.
known
Hey, listen,
you
everyone
back
loves
then.
Nordstrom. Nothing wrong with Nordstrom.
I wish I had known you back then, like, to help me out. But I basically, like, I had a week to figure out what I was going to wear. And that was in between trying to market the book. And what was so surprising to me, and it reminds me when you said that all of a sudden, like, people were getting best dressed and my name was attached to it. After I appeared on the Today Show, I realized how important it was. Like, I wore a name brand. I wore Vince Vaughn, I think.
Hmm.
Vince Vaughn? No, I don't know. Vince. That's what it was.
Vince, yeah, Vince, yeah,
Vince.
yeah.
It was expensive, let me tell you that.
Oh yeah, Vince, yeah.
But I started seeing other stylists were screenshotting and sharing Amberly Lago and Vince and Nordstrom's Amberly Lago, and I was like, that is so weird. And it
Uh-huh.
was the first time I ever realized, wow, your style really does matter. Like, people
Yes.
are looking at that.
Yes, and I love that you shared that because, for me, like, again, whether it be a celebrity or be, everyday person, when I'm working with them, I always ask them, like, what is the message, that you're trying to send? Or in a celebrity's case, or, like expert's case, what is your brand? Like what, like that's what's important, and that's where I think for me as a stylist, I feel like I stand out in that sense. And I've always stood out in that sense because I don't just say, hey, this is hot, you need to wear this. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's more than that. Yes, of course, I want you to, feel great. I want you to look fabulous, all those things. But if you are not feeling it and it's not you, then
Yeah.
I'm not doing you any favors, because then you're not going to wear it the way you should. You're not going to feel comfortable about it. And I noticed that with other stylists, sometimes I would work with, like, as amazing as they were, to them, it was more about their art. And I get that for certain events, like it is all about like the art and the creation. But on an everyday basis where they're using you for all different events and things, even like a red carpet, and they want to show up as themselves and not maybe a persona or a character, it's like, what is your brand? And this was like the fights sometimes I would have in these sitting down agency offices and management offices, with their teams, going like, listen, I get it. You're showing me this mood board. I know what you're saying, but like, what's the brand? Like, give me, 3 words that describes this person and what you're trying to come across. And they'd be like, oh, just find the outfit. And I'm like, I can do that. I can find outfits all day long. But like, I want to make sure that I'm going to give you what it is that like Amber Lago wants to present to the world. What is it that describes her style? And so I felt like for me, that was the biggest high in styling, when I would reach that and people would say like, oh my God, like perfect example, Holly Robinson Pete. I worked with her for quite a few years, and I'll never forget when she went to the BET Awards. Everyone was giving me, such a hard time with what I had picked for, her outfit. She didn't usually wear a jumpsuit, all these things, da, da, da. And she ended up getting best dressed everywhere. And not only that, she
Wow.
landed like 4 new roles on like new movies and TV shows. And they said like, never looked better, didn't know she was 50. It's like those kinds of things can make or break a situation. And she didn't even expect for it to even land her some new projects, and it was like, because we transformed her look and her style and who she was, and we didn't go crazy, but we just made some tweaks and figured out, where is she now? She's a mom, she's a badass, she's an entrepreneur, she's all these things, not just an actress of, and the husband, wife of. It was like plus plus plus. How do you create that? All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden it just transformed everything. And I'll just never forget when, after she went to the BT Awards, everybody was like talking about this peach, number that she wore, this jumpsuit that was like, for her, I mean, massively changing, in her career and where she was landing jobs and what she was doing. And that was just one example for me. And so I always think about that. So I love that you said that, because I think a lot of times people don't realize the benefit of a
Well,
stylist. And maybe,
yeah, and I mean, as you can see, I'm not big with name brands. I'm like, Vince Vaughn, no, not the
but
actor.
it
What
doesn't
was
have
that
to
brand?
be,
It
yeah,
was
but it doesn't have to
Vince.
be, name brands,
But
that's not
yeah, it was
necessarily
how
like,
it made me feel. It was
exactly. It's
like
how it
I
makes you feel.
wanted how it made me feel. And also, it's not just the moment that you do that talk show, it's
Right.
how you leverage it afterwards. So,
Absolutely.
an interview, how you're going to leverage that. And so if I wore a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, and I love my friend that told me, wear your cowboy
Of
hat.
course, because she wanted you to be you. And yeah, of course.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like I may not have landed a spot on the Doctors or
Right.
Hallmark had they seen that interview and go, oh gosh, that
Right.
girl is like a cowgirl, not sure we want a cowgirl, like,
Right.
so
Right.
it really is important. And I love that you look at the person and how it makes them feel. And you can really be like a catalyst in someone's career and taking them from
Absolutely.
one place
Yeah. And
to
I mean,
another.
and I've had people, like, even I've done remote consultations for, on certain apps that I work with. Like, I work with one amazing app called Style Life, and we have a website and everything. And I'm one of their main stylists. And I had a woman a few months ago who, she was so like broken down and so nervous because of everything that's going on with changes with the pandemic, and asked, for me to, help dress her for an interview that she had on Zoom. And I, had to help her with her confidence level and everything with what she was wearing. And she was, nervous, even though she was home. She's like, I'm used to doing interviews in person. I don't even know how to put myself together and this and that. And so I walked her through, like, what she wanted to present, on this conference and what it was. And, she wrote me, a week later and was like, I got the job, and I'm so beyond
Oh,
happy. And I felt so good sitting, in my living room. And it's like stories like that, like, light me up. Like, it's like, that's where I'm like, okay, this is why I love fashion. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love the glitz and glam, and, I loved, especially before I was a mom, the red carpet and all that lifestyle. But for me, like, the heart of styling, like the feeling, no matter who it was I was styling, when someone appreciated what I was doing with them and how they felt, and like really felt that like confidence is your best accessory, and rocked it, and then continued to rock that in their life, and it transformed things for them. That to me is like a game changer. It was like, this is why I love what I do, and why I try now to really work with so many different personal clients, and, even just via Zoom and, remote. I mean, it's such a good feeling to be able to be a part of that transformation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think because you have such a big why and a purpose, it doesn't even probably feel like work. I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine yesterday on the phone, and I said, yeah, when you're really doing what you love and it just things kind of fall into place and you're working really hard, but the right things come along and it just feels like it's a good fit and things just feel good. That's how I know I'm on the right path versus when I feel like it's such a struggle and I'm in
Yeah.
quicksand. That's when I know I got to take a look at this and am I really forcing something? Should it be this hard? And then always circle back to my why I'm doing it. And I love
I love
your
that
why.
message. And I think that's great. And I love that you said that, because that's kind of honestly where I got to at, when I was, getting pregnant with my first daughter, Amelia. I started like not loving the full styling of celebrities anymore. It was like something switched for me. And it was, I think my perspective was changing. I realized that I should be, resting more. I realized that I should be home more, not out all night, all these things, because I was, pregnant, I was carrying life, and it was really hard for me at first to be like, okay, I just won't, go to this event, or okay, I won't stay till 10 o'clock tonight. And it was a weird transition for me, but I really started to feel like, you know what, I have to start like doing me. And I felt like
Hmm.
this guilt because I had always done everyone else and had always taken care of all of
Yeah.
my clients. And I had some get mad at me. I had some that were, angry that I wasn't available as much and I was sending an assistant and, all these things. And I still made sure they had amazing outfits, but they wanted me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like they just
I
wanted me
went through
there.
that transition and I had clients that were really mad at me, like really mad, like scary, like cussing me out mad.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
I had one
like,
of my clients flipping out while I was giving birth mad, like literally like emailing, calling while I was in labor mad. Like
oh
it was,
yeah, yeah, I hear you. And I remember when I had to that transition where, after my motorcycle accident and I thought, who's going to want to work with me? I'm like broken now. I can't do the things I used to do. I mean, I used to teach people how to pace themselves for running and now I'm on crutches. And my business boomed. My clientele, I think because they were like, well, if she can do it and push herself like that in a wheelchair in the gym and then get on crutches, then they're like, I want
yeah,
to do it too.
inspiration. Hmm.
But then I had to like really transition because it was really killing me to be on my feet for that long all day. And I remember one time I was at the gym and my husband came over to me. He was so pissed and he was like, get off the gym floor. You're bleeding out across the gym floor. Like I had had surgery like the week before and it
Wow.
was bleeding and I was still training clients. And I remember that decision where I had to cut back. And I told one client, she was like, well, what am I going to do? Who's going to be my therapist? What? And I
Right.
was like, oh, girl, that's scary if you think I'm your therapist because
Yep.
I'm
Hmm.
pretty crazy
I know.
myself. But
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I had that with so many clients where it was like that's how they felt with me too. I think when you're doing stuff like that, training and styling, and you're like really in it with them and you're sharing so much, they do feel like that. They feel like they can unload so much on you and depend on you in so many ways, and not just in the way that you're doing a service. It's so
mhm.
much more.
It
And that was
is.
me
It's so
too. It was
much
like,
more.
yeah, and I didn't realize it. And then it was like when I had to pull back and do my own self-care to get ready to, for this new life, it was like, oh my God. And it was really hard because I had to let go of some relationships and I had to say goodbye to some clients because they just didn't get it. Some were cool and transitioned with me, but others were not, but it transitioned me into allowing myself to open myself up to more than just styling and becoming, like you said, a mompreneur and being able to, do other things like, the influencer thing. I hate that word influencer, but
I
I felt into
know.
that, I felt
I
into that space.
know.
It
I
was
know. I'm
like,
like, I don't want to be an influencer. I want to make an
yeah,
impact. But I guess you
exactly.
can be an
Thank you.
influencer and make an impact. But
Yeah,
I
you
never
can be,
really
but I think
thought
the
of myself
word,
as like an influencer. I didn't,
Same.
and
When people say
someone
that, like,
called me
oh,
that and
she's
I'm
an
like,
influencer. I'm like, oh
yeah,
yeah, okay. But I love that you said it's true. It's like you want to make an impact. You want to be of influence, right? You want to like help people, with what you're sharing. And if maybe something you share helps them make a decision on something and you really truly authentically love it, then great, and that's kind of the space I've been in. And so when I became a mom, I was just kind of really lucky that I started having all these brands reach out to me that saw I was sharing my motherhood struggle and my ups and downs, wholeheartedly. And we're like, hey, would you want to try this food? Or, hey, would you want to use this for your daughter? And, I would just share candidly what I actually really liked and what was working in my life. And that's kind of how I fell into that. But it was something I never, for me, when, now obviously my Instagram has changed. But if you looked at my Instagram a few years ago, it was all of my clients, you know what I mean? Personal, celebrity, experts. And it was me like once every week, you know what I mean? I was never in the grid. It was just my clients, my styling, my tips, that was it. And it's just so crazy now when I look at, my feed now, it's like all me, all family, all this, all that. And I laugh, but it's like, that was where,
now you leave that up there, right? On
yeah.
your Insta. See, I love that you leave that up there. I leave my Instagram post from the very beginning
Yeah.
where I first got on Instagram and I had no
Mhm.
idea what I was doing. I still don't
Oh, yes,
really.
same. I know.
And
No filters, no presets, no this, no that. I know.
I mean, I'm like, oh, okay. But I leave those posts up there because some of them are really bad,
Yeah.
because I now coach people how to write books and
Mhm.
become a speaker. And even as scary as this, I never a million years would have thought this, but how to kind of brand themselves. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't go
I love
to
that.
school for that, but
Yeah.
I teach them how to share their story because they're like, I don't know how. And I said, look, we all have to just practice. If you look on my Instagram from the very beginning until now, it has changed drastically. And I know that some people delete all their beginning posts and it just looks like they started off with,
Right.
a million
Because that's
people
the advice
liking
they're
their
giving, right?
post. And
Right.
I'm like, no, I started off with, if I got, if I reached the double digits in people liking my post, like, oh my God, I got 11 people that saw that today. And,
Totally.
it's
Totally.
like, I leave that so people can see that it takes time to build your brand and your
Mhm.
platform and to share your story. And you just have to keep doing it every day. And I love that you're on the grid more and you're sweet babies.
Oh,
And
thank you.
how old are your girls? The youngest is 3
So the
months.
3-month-old is Arlie, and then Amelia is like 2 years and a couple months.
Wow.
She's two
Wow.
under two.
Okay, well, you talked about, I'd actually written down to ask you about guilt, because I know there's a lot of guilt, I think, that comes along with being a mom for some reason.
Mhm.
I feel guilty when, I'm working a lot, and because I love what I do. And so I could literally be working nonstop and just love every minute of it. But I went for a walk with my daughter the other day and I was like, well, I've got the outline done. I'm ready to start my second book. And she like got teary eyed and was like,
Oh,
no, mom, you get so busy. And so it's like, I have that guilt when it's like I've got the dog that follows me around and the dog needs attention. My husband, I want to spend time with him. He needs attention. I want quality time with my kids. And it's like,
yeah.
do you have that mom guilt ever? And if
Oh
so,
my gosh.
how do you alleviate that?
Yeah. I think any mom has mom guilt, even if they maybe don't recognize it. They find it, you find it in one way or another. Some feel it in guilt, some feel it in shame, some feel it both ways. I feel like for me, I definitely feel it. Like even like this morning getting on a podcast, like it's like, oh, I could be, laying in bed and, relaxing and soaking up the moments, but this was really important to me. And I really wanted, to be on and, wanted to, be on your show. And I told my husband like, hey, since you're not working today, can you have the girls for a little bit so I could be on and do this and do that? And, and it is hard, especially them being so little. I feel like I'm constantly missing little moments, when
Hmm.
I'm not present. And I think for me, to be honest, thank you for asking that question. I think for me, with Amelia, especially as a new mom, when the guilt settled in for me, it was like almost like debilitating it at first. And I think it also played into my postpartum depression, because I would go to set, and in my mind, before I had Amelia, I was going to like pop her out and get right back to set and start styling. And first off, I had an unexpected C-section, pretty traumatic birth, and things just did not go the way I thought they were going to go. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was kind of like, I was, kind of bedridden for quite a, few weeks. And then I wasn't driving for weeks. And it was just like this constant like mountain that I was just not, getting over.
Okay,
And it
thank
was,
you for saying that about the C-section too, because I had to have a cesarean with my second child,
yeah.
and I cried when I found out she was
Oh, yeah.
breech too, and I cried, and I always wondered, why do some women opt to have a
Yes.
cesarean? Because
Yes.
it is like
It's so intense.
brutal
It is.
recovering from that.
It
And
is.
I too
A
I
major
had post,
surgery.
it is major. And
Yeah.
I don't think my husband even realized how major it was until he was in the operating room and he saw them like literally
Same with
take
my
my
husband.
insides
Take your
out.
baby out, take your organs out. Yeah, well, because the thing is our society, right, has normalized a C-section. And not that it's not, a great thing to have that option. God forbid you need to have a baby that way. But I agree with you. It's like, and I know some women are gonna be like, oh my gosh, well, I wanted to have a C-section. That's fine. That's up to you. But you're right. It's like there's a reason why our bodies, naturally are supposed to have a baby vaginally, and the C-section is there. God forbid that can't happen, or it's needed, or there's some kind of risk. But I agree with you. And I think because society has normalized a C-section, like, oh, it's no big deal, you just take the baby out. It's like, no, it is major surgery.
It
It
is
is a big deal.
major. And
Yeah.
I was just talking to this with one of my best friends yesterday. And she goes, she's about to have her baby any day. And she's like, anything I should know, like about, and I'm like, I just want to say, I didn't know this when, being a mom, a new mom, I said, I had postpartum depression. I
Yeah.
said, and especially with my second one, because it was a C-section and I couldn't exercise. I tried at about 3 weeks and my stomach, I tried to go for a run and
Yeah.
my stomach literally blew up like a balloon
Oh,
and
I
I
believe it.
started bleeding
Yeah.
again.
Mhm.
And I said, so if you start feeling sad or that a lot of moms go through that. I said, I didn't really know that. And I was
Yeah.
surprised and I was really hard on myself because
We
I
do. We shame
did.
ourselves,
I
right? Mhm.
shamed myself. And
Yeah.
then, I went to a psychiatrist after my husband was like, you need help. I went to a shrink and I'm like, I'm just depressed. I'm anxious. I'm like, thinking I don't know. I was not myself. I said, I know if I can just work out again, I'll feel okay. And she goes, well, you're crazy. If you have to work out to feel good, I need to put you on an antidepressant. And I was just like, oh my God, she just told me I'm crazy,
I'm crazy. Yeah. Right.
like crazy. And I did feel crazy, but to have
Right.
someone call you that. And
Yes.
so
It's terrible.
yeah, and it's such a big deal with your hormones and then the
There's
lifestyle
so
change right
much going
away.
on. Yeah.
So much. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I wish I had known that as, a mom. Because back when I
And that's
had,
why I share it, because I never in a million years expected to have postpartum depression. I really didn't even know much about it. You know what I
mm-hmm,
mean? I really didn't even, for me, I'm a pretty happy going, person. And I never thought like I would be depressed, especially after having my first daughter,
mm-hmm,
and it was just like from the traumatic birth to the birth not going the way I wanted it to, from being transferred from, a water birth that was supposed to be fully natural to transferred to a hospital, at 30 hours in, to end up in a C-section at 42 hours later on full blown meds. It was just like, and I realized some people are like, oh my God, but thank God you're fine. The baby's fine. I'm like, I get that. But it wasn't what I thought was going to be. And it wasn't in my mind, my plan. And I think I got so like just married to that plan of what was going to happen and how I was going to control things.
uh-huh.
Newsflash, you can't control things. And I think it prepared me for motherhood, in that sense. It was like, like, listen, motherhood, you cannot plan, you cannot control. It's like surrender, but I wasn't ready to surrender. And I
mm-hmm,
fought that like tooth and nail. And when it came to the C-section, same thing. I wanted, to get back on set. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. And as soon as I could, I did. And then I was like depressed. I was on set and was like, I don't like how I look. I don't like how I feel. and I don't like that I'm now missing that Amelia's home with my mom and I'm not seeing this. And yeah, okay, I'm grateful that I have help, but like now I'm missing what she's doing. And I was so torn. And the mom guilt was so heavy because there was a guilt of I was missing things with Amelia. And then there was a guilt of I don't like how I feel. I don't like how I look. I'm not the same Allie anymore. And like, ew, like, how could I even style people now and do this job because I'm not the same person I was who could maintain this glam every day and could look fabulous and do this and do that. So for me, I feel like it was this double guilt, like of like Allie guilt and mom guilt. And I couldn't get myself out of one or the other. It was just like, and then the postpartum depression started getting, heavier. And when I was home, I decided to be home more with Amelia and not be on set as much. And it was just like, felt like I was losing myself like, all at once. It was just like, I didn't know how to get back to who I was and how to find myself again.
Well, I think a lot of moms feel like that, like they lose themselves and and it's easy to do because you get so busy with, just trying to make sure they're fed, trying to make sure there's food on the table, going to work. And then, and I still do this some days where I'm like, okay, everybody's fed, the house is clean, I've got some things done for work, and I look like hell and feel like hell because I haven't even taken time to drink water, eat like the basics. Yes. Like I got to get back to the basics and put myself on the to-do list because really we can't be of service to, and sometimes that's what I have to tell myself. How can I be of service to my clients? How can I be, how can I be a good mom or a good wife if I am not taking care of my health and myself? And I have to look at it that way before I can move forward. What did you do to start to really get grounded in who you were again and really move forward?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I didn't, know I was spiraling out of control. I didn't know that things were getting darker. I just kind of felt like, oh, I'm just figuring it out. I'm a new mom. I'm just going with the flow. And my husband said to me, one night he was just like, things just aren't, things aren't right. And, you don't seem right and this and that. And that was my podcast was born out of my first episode that I, recorded. I kind of reiterated what I had said to him, which was, I feel like I'm mourning the death of me. And I said it out loud and I didn't really think much of it. That was just how I felt. But for him and others around me that heard that, it was like, oh, okay, that's maybe, not the best thing to feel. And so, after a little bit of time, I started speaking to a therapist. I saw a postpartum specialist and they, diagnosed me and said, you have pretty heavy postpartum depression. What do you want to do? And they, of course, my doctor had delivered Amelia, had said that they could put me on meds and this and that. And I am just not a, medical kind of person. Like I get it. It exists for a reason and it's a godsend, but I like to do things naturally when I can. Clearly I tried to do that with my daughter with her birth. And so I was like, I really don't want to get on medication. I really want to try to find other ways. And thank God, I think, especially being out here in California, there are so many more holistic solutions and people are open to. And so between doing, the therapy and my postpartum specialist was like, okay, we're going to do visualizations and we're going to do cognitive therapy and we're going to do meditations and all these things. That's really honestly what started to put me back together. I kind of had to like fall apart to find myself again and realize that like it was okay that I no longer felt like myself because I really wasn't the woman or the girl I was before I had my daughter. Motherhood really changes you so much. I mean, no matter how you give birth, you literally survive a car accident of your body and you're put back together and then, your baby's there. And it's like, it's a beautiful, amazing blessing, but we go through like a lot, when it comes to the pregnancy, to the delivery, to all of it. And I think a lot of people don't share that and don't talk about that, but it's like, for me, I was so overwhelmed by the experience, by everything what happened and how I felt so changed that once I finally started putting myself back together and really, finding meditation and, doing visualizations and all different things. I also did a little bit of a CBD help with like oils and some different supplements and tinctures. And, I know some people that's kind of like some people believe in it, some people don't. For me, it was very helpful when I would feel anxiety or feel a little bit of depression. I would, put the tincture and it would help take me down. And, I felt comfortable, and my, midwife and doctors all said it was fine as long as it was in moderation with breastfeeding. So I felt comfortable, doing it instead of taking, a drug medication. And I think all those things combined, and just allowing myself that time to heal and process and not rush everything. Whereas I think my whole life I've been on this kind of like autopilot. What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? What's going on? But I didn't know how to slow. I didn't know how to allow myself to just be a new mom and kind of succumb to that and surrender and say, okay, this is now a new way of life, and it'll feel weird, but eventually you'll figure it out. And I just wanted things to just go back, and I just wanted to, fast forward and quick. And once I finally like released all of that, by the time I remember Amelia was about a year old, that's when I started seeing light at the end of the tunnel. That's when I started really starting to feel like myself again. And I thought, wow, I feel like transformed. Like I feel stronger than ever. I feel, more like myself, but a different version of myself. I feel more empowered. I feel like even though I was so heavy and broken, now I kind of see things that maybe I wasn't dealing with, like we were talking about before. Like, I would always take care of my clients, but not take care of me. And that was like, I loved it as my job, but I didn't realize that I actually wasn't doing a service to myself. I started discovering all these things about myself that I hadn't really dealt with. And
well, I think everybody's going through that right now. We were talking about this before we actually pressed record about what's going on in the world right now. And I think, in California, we are still pretty locked down here.
Yes, we are.
Very, very locked down, actually. I mean, I got the homeschool going on. We've got, things still
Everyone's
closed.
pivoted and transitioned and is, we're on Zoom and virtual. I mean,
yeah. Because I was doing all of my recordings in person, and I'm like, okay, well, this is the new way that we're going to record the sessions is through Zoom. But I love how you say you had to like fall apart and feel broken before you could put yourself back together. But then you didn't just sit there and not do anything about it. You did cognitive therapy. You took a look at what was going on and what wasn't working. You did, you did therapy. You did, and that's a thing that I think we have to be our own advocate, because I didn't feel like medication was the right thing for me either. I did try to take it, and I would throw up every single time I took it. And they kept saying, well, it's going to take a little while, give it 30 days. And I'm like, so you want me to throw up for 30 days while I'm getting you?
And that's like your own like body and intuition saying
like, no, it's not working. So I had to try different things too. And I think that that's powerful that you had to take a look at what was going on. And I think if we
it was hard, let me tell you, like, as it's hard to do the work, like you sit there and you literally, they want you to like sit in your own shit, and you're like, who wants to do that? And you're just sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to deal with. There's so much I have to work through. And it seems like you'll never get through it, but it's like, but you have to do the work, because if you don't do the work, you're just going to stay where you are. And for me, I couldn't stay where I was, because I not only wasn't thriving for myself, but I wasn't, I wasn't enjoying anything. I wasn't getting to enjoy, the actual, like, being a new mom. I loved Amelia and I loved the bonding. And I remember like, I would love playing with her, but the minute I would put her down for a nap, I would go cry in a corner for an hour while she'd be sleeping. And I couldn't enjoy like anything about me. I looked in the mirror and I would talk horrible to myself. I couldn't, look forward to, even just getting like ready, because I didn't like, how I felt. Like, it was just like everything on top of everything. And it was like, you can't live life this way.
No, well, how did you, I think we all have that voice, that inner critic that mine goes and just has a party up there. And I have to like consciously do things to stop that inner critic or the imposter syndrome. What are some of the things that you have done when you had those, self-limiting beliefs or just that negative self-talk? What were some of the things that you did to change that?
I think a meditation has been a game changer in my life. I laugh because years ago I was told I should meditate when I first was styling, and I would look at people and be like, what are you, crazy? I don't have time to meditate. Like, and they'd be like, it's a few minutes. And I'd be like, no, I got to focus on this with fashion. I got to do that, and it was like, I couldn't comprehend slowing down to meditate. But I didn't realize how much goodness and how much beauty is in that stillness. And it's not just about the meditation, but it's about like how you actually connect to yourself, to soul, to spirit, to who you are, the essence of who we all are.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I was able to really find that once I allowed myself those few minutes and started, of course I started with apps because I couldn't do it on my own. And now I can do it on my own, but it was like I needed to listen to someone to guide me to say, connect to your breath, take a minute, and it was like even just connecting to my breath and doing breath work. I had no idea how powerful just taking a breath sounds so crazy because we all breathe, right? But like actually breathing and actually like and like feeling that connection and feeling that breath and like realizing that like when you take a few more, you actually get deeper and get more into yourself and into your body and into your feelings and everything, and get out of your head and what you're saying in your mind and all the thoughts and everything. And you just connect to you, you're able to see more clearly, and then I would start to journal out, like, okay, this is what's bothering me and this is what I'm feeling today, or this is what I was telling myself in the mirror, or this is this, or this is that, and just getting it out, and whether it be speaking it out or journaling it out, whatever it was, just shedding it for myself and being like, that's not what I want to hold, and like, what do I want to bring in? And then, writing down and reading positive affirmations and listening to meditations that gave me that positivity and gave me that empowerment and reinforcement to be like, keep going and keep doing the work and keep doing this, keep doing that. That was honestly like the start for me for it all, because I feel like I wouldn't have been able to then like really sit down, like you said, and be mindful and be like, oh, that's not my thought. Don't think about that. No, replace it with this. I don't think I would have ever been able to get there if I hadn't have started with just the basics of what breath work and meditation and journaling was, and like visualization of like, what do you want to visualize as like, your day today, or what do you want to visualize to happen at the end of this week? And just like little things, just as like, like little goals and little mindsets of just, that you could achieve, even if it was just like as small as like, I want to get up and do my makeup today and like actually somewhat feel like myself. It sounds so silly when you say it out loud, but what you were saying about the self-care and the whole thing of getting ready and putting yourself together, it's like, it's not necessarily about the glam. It's about the fact that you're loving on yourself. It's that self-love. It's not just self-care. It's really self-love. It's allowing yourself to feel good and to do things for yourself. And yes, we all have guilt. And yes, as moms, it's like the heaviest guilt, because you're like, oh, I need to be, with this one. Now that I have two, it's like, I'm like, oh, well, she needs this, and then she needs this, and then how am I going to do this? And I like to spend time with Justin. I like to do that, and I got to work on my job and blah, 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 all the things. But you have to like, I've had so many moments, especially now in quarantine, where I've had to sit with myself and say, you know what? You did all those things, and yeah, maybe you have a bunch more on your to-do list, but like right now you're feeling pretty heavy and pretty like exhausted, and you need to take 5 minutes. That's all you're going to get today. And like, relax. And sometimes that means get in the shower. Sometimes that means do my face. Sometimes that means literally just lay on the couch for 5 minutes and, veg out and have a snack. Sometimes that means meditation. I think it's a matter of like what uplifts you, what makes you feel good, like what really sparks you and that light inside of you that makes you feel like you're filled back up again, even if it's not fully, a little something till you can really fill up your cup. I used to laugh when people would say, oh, you can't pour from empty cup, especially as a mom, but yeah, okay. Because I was, again, so used to being on autopilot and thought to myself, oh, it's fine, I can do it all, no big deal, and run around. And I did in the beginning, but I exhausted myself for it. And I did myself a disfavor. Like I remember with Amelia, I ran to a red carpet at like, I think she was like maybe 2 or 3 months old. And everybody was like, you're crazy. Why are you going to a red carpet? And you're taking her, and like, you're barely even healed. And you're going to go walk this red carpet, and you're going to go style this client, and you're bringing her. And it's like, I'm fine. It's fine. I'll do it. And I did. And my client was thrilled. And I looked great for the moment, whatever, but I broke down, afterwards. And I didn't realize how much,
because your body is still healing too after cesarean. And
and
I did the
so is your mind.
same. Yeah. And so is your mind.
Your body and your mind, and it's interconnected,
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I am going to fit in that dress, and I'm going to go, not
Right.
the red
I'm
carpet,
going to
but
be
another event.
Superwoman. Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And in fact, everything that you're describing is, I teach something called the PACER method, and it stands for perspective, acceptance, community, endurance. And the last part is rest,
I love
which,
that.
and I kept wanting to call it the pace, like you're going to pace through, and I had to learn over and over, no, it's pacer, because I would not rest and I would end up in the ER. And I remember thinking before to myself, how did somebody end up in the ER for exhaustion or whatever? Well, I would end up in the ER. And finally, and I'm embarrassed to say, but this was just last year, I went to the ER. I had another infection. I'm prone to infections in my leg because of the accident. And I went
Okay.
in, and it was like the seventh time I had been in the ER. I was traveling a lot. And they said, you know what? This is the seventh infection that you've had. You need to go to a doctor. You really need to take care of yourself. And it was like, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, the R is now something I have to focus on the pacer method. Like, it's recovery. It's like,
Yes.
get like
And
all the
it's
things
rest,
that you
like you
said.
said.
It's
Yes.
rest. And
And you have
and
to allow that, right? Like you have to
mhm.
allow that rest. And I love that you said that. And that's a beautiful, acronym and message, because it's like we just all, I think, expect, no matter whether you're a mom or not, just do and do and do and go and go and go. And our society has kind of set us up that way. And I think it's interesting with now being, quarantine, or how we all were in the pandemic, that it was kind of like, as much as it was very frustrating, very heavy for so many of us. And I understand, for some really, traumatic and tragedies, but at the same time, I feel like there was such a gift in that time, because we all learned like the art of stillness. I mean, we all learned like how to connect back to, family and friends and things that are really important, that maybe we had forgotten, because we are all on autopilot so much, and we live on
Mhm.
social media and on, our phones and on our devices and all these things, myself included, completely guilty. And it forced us to be like, no, you're in the present, and like you can't change anything. Like, you are in lockdown. This is what this is.
Mhm.
And we were all just kind of having to learn how to like relive in this new time. And I feel like, that stillness and that rest that you talked about, like, none of us give ourselves, especially moms, give ourselves that time to rest. And the
Mhm.
quarantine kind of like, even though of course I know so many of us are doing a million things, but it was like a new kind of rest. Like your mind got to
Mhm.
rest differently, and you got to do things differently and enjoy family and just things that like we never would have had. And in a sense, to me, I feel like 2020 was kind of a gift, because we'll never have this time again. Like the world's not going to be slow forever,
Mhm.
and it's like this is just a period in time that we're all dealing with. And as hard as it is, and the homeschooling and all these things that we're all going through, and husbands at home working, and it's like I look at that and I'm like, but we would never have had this. I wouldn't have him here to transition to being a mom of two, and thank God, I've had no postpartum depression and no baby blues and no, and I think a huge part of that is because I was able to rest and recover, with my second, and have him, and, have this new experience as a mom of two and all these things. And I think, I think about allowing myself to like actually rest, like whereas Amelia jumped right back in, and I was, styling, and I was on social media. With Arlie, I signed off on my social for 3 weeks. People were like, oh my gosh, she hasn't been on. But I gave myself that permission to
Oh,
be like,
that's good.
you
That is
know,
so wonderful.
but it was
That
hard for me. It was hard, it was
mhm.
hard to say, oh, what if I miss a brand, or what if I miss this project? And I did, I signed back on. I had messages from people, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with you. And I had to just go and let it go and say, you know what? It's okay. Other opportunities will come. This was my time to be as a new mom with my new family, and to learn
Mhm.
and to adjust and to rest. And I think we all need to like really listen to that inner, like you were saying, of like, if you really like have someone say to you like 7 infections, maybe you should, let your body rest and heal. Sometimes it takes the universe to tell us like, hey, you paying attention? Like next thing's not going to be so great, and
Mhm.
I think that we all have to sometimes look at ourselves and say, how do I rest? How do I let myself rest? And I think I do that now with myself. Like last night, perfect example, I wanted to work. My girls were sleeping. My husband was, doing his thing, playing games. I wanted to work. I had a bunch of things I needed to do. And I was just like tired. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to veg out on the couch and watch my show on Netflix that I haven't been able to watch and just do that for the next 2 hours. And I just laid there and did that and did nothing, and it felt so good to be able to just kind of give back to me, as silly as it is, but just sit there, with tea and watching a show and just totally be mindless and just enjoy something simple as that. Sometimes can be rest. It doesn't have to always look like meditation or, yoga for an hour or all these things I feel like sometimes people feel are unattainable. Like I've had people say to me like, oh, I can't get 2 minutes to meditate. I'm like, well, that's you not allowing yourself that time. Everyone has 2 minutes somewhere in their day. Like you just do. You have to carve it out, but you do. So it's like,
Well,
I'm
I think
too.
what's important to you, you'll find time to do it. And what's
Yes.
not important, you'll find an excuse.
Yes.
And I know for me, I really need time alone just to have to do writing, just to read out,
Yeah.
to
Just kind
read.
of connect to like you and be able to get into your
Yes, to
space.
do a short meditation, to write out what I'm grateful for. I need that morning routine. And so even though, we're recording, it's Labor Day, I was up at 5 o'clock this morning so I could have that quiet time. And then I was working out by 6:30 because I knew I had an appointment at 8 and then I was going to see. So I found the time, like I made sure I went to bed a little earlier last night so I got enough sleep. And I think that's important. What's
Sleep
important
is so
to
important. Yes.
sleep, rest, moving your body, because that moves your mind. And I say that a lot, and I'm sure people would get sick of me saying move your body, but
I need to hear it because I'm like in that space of where I'm clear now to like start to work out and and it's like I'm not someone who really works out. I've always tried to like get into that, but it's not something I've ever enjoyed. I've been trying to find more joy in it and find more of that space of like I want to do this besides to be healthy, but to like actually enjoy it. I just haven't really found that yet, So I appreciate you saying that because it's true. Like you really do. And so I've been doing walks with my family. Like with my daughter Amelia loves and asks to go on walks, all the time. So like,
well, see, there you go. That's
right.
moving your body, and that's a way. And I do that with my daughter. We go on scooter rides. I've wiped out pretty hard. She's like wants to race me all the time. And it gets me out of the house. It gets me kind of in, just in play. I think it's important to find time for play and find time for fun so we can spark our creativity and not just be all about the hustle and the grind. And I love that you took time to allow yourself to just have some moments to watch Netflix or, I think that's so important. And so, if anybody listening today gets one thing out of this podcast, rest, because resting is recovering. And I think we need to really make it more of a necessity instead of a luxury. It should really be.
Yes, you're right. And think about it too, right? It's like even when you could be as creative as all can be, but all of us feel guilty, at like all different times. But it's like you have to also say to yourself, you know what? Like I won't be able to keep creating if I don't rest. If I don't allow myself that downtime, to put into myself and to, rehabilitate everything going on with myself, that I'm not going to be able to continue to outpour to everyone else and be able to also think about what I want to talk about. Like you burn out, right? Like we've all burned out before and it's a terrible feeling, but like we all do it. And I know for me, I would burn out over and over and over again, before I was a mom, and I didn't even know that I was burning out. And it's like, my dad used to always say to me, my grandmother always said when she was alive, you can't burn the candle at both ends, Allie. And I used to annoy me. It's like, oh, whatever, Dad. But now I get it. It's like, it's true. You can't have both going and expect to be able to keep moving things, making things progress. You have to rest and you have to allow yourself that rest and know that, hey, after that rest, then comes the cycle of creativity. Like it's going to flow so much better if you allow things to actually kind of just, happen. And I think that's something for me, motherhood has really taught me is I'm surrendering more and I'm allowing that rest to happen and I'm allowing things to kind of just play. And some days it's very hard for me to allow that because I have things on my mind or I know I have things I have to do, but I have to remind myself like that this is what motherhood is about. This is my lesson right now. This is, there's a reason that things have aligned for me the way they have. And I need to learn my lesson, because if I don't, I'm going to keep being stuck where I've been before, which is the burnouts or the exhaustion or all these things. And I think going back to the guilt that we talked about, same thing. Like when you allow yourself that rest, when you allow yourself to just surrender and flow with things, the more you lose that guilt, because you can't have the guilt, because you're kind of like dismantling that guilt. You're saying to yourself, no, I'm going to let go of those thoughts that like I need to do this and this today. I will get those things done, but maybe not all today, especially obviously it's not on a deadline per se. And and say, what is the one thing I must get done today, and focus on that. And that's been a big shift for me. Is like I used to have to get done like 20 things in a day to feel productive. Now if I get one or two things done, it's like, okay, that's a win, and I tell myself that, like, I didn't expect to get those things done today, so I did those. So now tomorrow, like if you don't have time to do something else, then just let it go and like rest and be with the girls and just focus on them, And I think that that's a permission we have to really give to ourselves, no matter what our situation is, and say to ourselves, some days are going to be productive and some days are going to be at rest. And it's okay either way.
I think so too. And I really think it's important. I love writing a to-do list and checking things off, but you're right. I have a schedule now, and I schedule in moments for me to rest, or moments that I'm not going to do interviews or not going to do recordings for the podcast or whatever it may be, because we all need those times to spark our creativity.
Yeah.
I love everything that you shared, and I'm so grateful that you took the time
Yes, thank you so much for
to
having
be
me
on the
on.
show. I wanted to ask you, what is your definition of resilience?
Ooh, this is my definition of resilience. I guess kind of what you were saying before when you said about, the falling apart. I think that, a lot of times in our world, we feel like we can't be vulnerable. We can't be, sharing hard times, because we're supposed to always keep it together and keep things pretty. I definitely was extremely guilty of that. And I think that I learned again through motherhood and everything, from going from like the glam of being a celebrity stylist to now being a mom and not being able to get so glam all the time, that, when I fell apart from the postpartum depression and I, lost myself, but then found myself in a beautiful way all over again, that's resilience. It's falling down and being able to get back up. We all have vulnerable times. We all have hard times, even if you don't see them on a highlight, feed on someone's Instagram. That's the one thing I can't stand about social media. It's like, even I try so hard to post raw images and things that aren't necessarily as pretty as someone would want them to be. But even then, it's still a pretty photo, because it just is. That's just what social media is. And I think we have to remember that there's actually a story and a mess and a situation behind every picture when you look at social media. And so if you're listening and you look at someone's social and you say, oh gosh, look at this, they look perfect, remember, they most likely went through their own struggles, and they went through their own shedding and their own vulnerability. And I think that, when you can realize that, and you can look at yourself and say, but I still pulled through and I still did it, that's resilience. And you have to sometimes allow yourself to fall apart to be able to bring yourself back together in a better way.
Oh, that is beautiful and powerfully and said. Thank you for that. Well, I know who I'm calling when I need to be styled for.
Yes, I can't wait.
I hope that I have something to be styled for. Right now, I'm doing all my speaking virtually, so I'm literally
it's funny. I've been
dressed
helping
from the
some people
waist
get ready
up.
for their virtual speeches. Like I've been helping them do like their closet. If they want to do a remote consultation, they're like, hey, just help me pick something what I have. I've been helping them. Like they'll show me their closet and we'll do a remote Zoom, and I'll help them pick out an outfit for their virtual speech. So I've also learned to pivot in this time and make virtual work. So it doesn't.
Yeah.
I love to be in person, but you can also do it virtual.
Well, I hope I get to see you in person really soon.
IRL sometime soon. For sure.
Oh, thank you so much. Tell us where people can find you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I love your show. And people can find me all across social media at Levine Design. Just ALILEVINE design. My website is allylevine.com. That's where I share styling tips, where I blog about motherhood. It's a real combination of lifestyle. My TV segments that I do normally in a non-COVID world, where I share about brands and everything. You can also book me for styling. Either you can DM me or you can book me at allylevinestyling.com, and sign up. Like I said, I'm doing remote consultations and actual stylings and everything. I also am on the Styled Life app and website that I talked about. It's called Styled Life, STYLD life.com, and you can book me there as a stylist as well. I work with a team on that. And what else?
And also, y'all listen to her podcast. I
Yes,
love your podcast. You have
thank
some
you.
of my
Yes, and you're going
favorite
to be a
people.
guest on it soon.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, your podcast is awesome. And if
Thank
you
you.
don't already follow her right now on Instagram for sure. You can see all her stories and her beautiful baby girls.
Thank you.
You have such a beautiful heart and soul.
Thank
And
you, Bruce. So
it
do you.
was,
And I love what you're doing with your podcast and everything that you're putting out in the world. And, I love it, like I said, with the pacer to remind myself of that. I think you have a beautiful message and everything.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much.